As soon as I realized that the fiat currency that I am most involved with, which is the US dollar, is something that is actually being stolen by me because somebody else can print more of it, specifically the government, that means that they are literally taking away my power to purchase based off of what I'm working for. And so a lot of what I'm working for is actually just being robbed from me, not just from taxes in general, but also through the system being what it is. And we all know inflation is up. We all know that there's so many different things that are happening in the world where the uncertainty of everything is very chaotic. But this is one of the reasons why I began to myself invest into learning about Bitcoin. And the more I learned about Bitcoin, the more I learned about how money actually works. And so this is not financial advice, okay? Again, I have to state that on every video that I make for this channel, just to be clear. This is not financial advice, but it is something that maybe can be educational or just as an opinion-based perspective as well. So the thing is that I see most prevalent in our society today is that many people don't know how screwed over they really are becoming. And I know that because I was one of those people. I was so focused on just working and trying to make money. I was so stuck in a survival instinct. Like I was completely locked into, and not in the good kind of lock in, but I was completely locked into my mode of being that was completely survival based. You might say, if you're familiar with any kind of spiritual terms, even though I follow Christ, and I'm not trying to tell you to follow Christ here or get religious or anything like that, because I'm not religious, I'm ritualistic, but I'm just saying that this is who I am and this is what I'm about, right? I was so stuck in the lower chakras, you could say, and I was stuck in that root chakra where I wasn't able to actually expand my horizons. I was so stuck in my root chakra that I didn't even realize that I was stuck in the root chakra. Okay, and so what happened was is that I was unable to really see what the system was that I was in because I was so focused on trying to make money. And I was in debt, and even with student loans, like as much, like more than I do have now and all of that. It's just the things that were happening. I was told to get into debt. I was told to do these things. And I didn't even know and I didn't realize that the reason that you get into debt, the reason that you are encouraged to get into debt, going to school and taking out student loans is they'll tell you, oh, it looks good on your credit score. Now you're going to get a higher credit score. Well, the only reason that they would want you to have a higher credit score is so that you can make love with the banks. Okay, when you're in the banking system as well. And people, well, they don't tell you about this kind of thing because they're not really in the know. They don't really know what they don't know. And they're in the matrix, they're in the simulation, as I call it the simulation. And when you're in the simulator and with the simulator, you are more operating in lines with the spiritually sound perspective of life, with the creator. Now, what I see happening is that with Bitcoin, you can potentially, a lot of people will say, well, it's a Ponzi scheme, it's this or that. And I thought the same thing. But you know what I've realized is most people are against Bitcoin until they actually understand what it is. Because once you understand what it is that it's a system that completely frees the landscape for anybody to create long-term wealth, and you actually have that nobody can take away from you. Nobody takes away your Bitcoin. Okay, when you have, let's say, even 0.0001 Bitcoin, nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can take that away from you at all. And it's yours. Well, now, of course, if you have it in cold storage and all of that, which I'll be making a video about that in the future. But, it's very important and interesting for you to look into this to see how money actually works. Because honestly, I was kind of retarded before I was learning about money. I was just kind of retarded when it came to finances. And it was only when I was able to dip my toe into that retardation that I was actually able to come out the other side with a more grounded perspective. And I was able to lean into what I didn't know. And I was able to accept that maybe I don't understand as much about computers as I probably ought to. Maybe I don't understand about cryptography as much as I ought to. Maybe I don't understand about money as much as I ought to. And so I actually did the research on these things. And really, it's just about applying. Like, people will say, well, do the research, do the research. I don't really find that to be helpful. So what I find to be helpful is actually giving you pinpoints of what to look for and how to look for it. Okay, look at the history of gold specifically. Look at what happens with gold in certain market frames, okay? For example, in 2008, what happened? There was a recession, and right before the recession and during that recession, gold spiked. Okay, that's very interesting. Now, in the pandemic in 2020, also right through the pandemic, gold spiked. And right now, gold is spiking again. We don't really know why, but usually that's because the market is saying that something is going on that you can't quite see yet, or that you maybe see, but you don't really know how to respond, because people go back to gold. Like, why do people go to gold, or why do people go to silver? Okay, it's because they're always going to be a form of tangible wealth that goes back to the biblical times, okay? So it's very important to understand this perspective, and it's important to understand why gold has that flow, and it's important to understand how to read charts, because we all have access to the same charts. We have all access to the same information about these things. We just don't always know where to look. So it's about understanding the data processing power that you have and understanding if you have the right data to begin with. Okay, look at the Bitcoin Standard book. Okay, read books about finance. Don't just read about anything when it comes to finance. Look at people that have actually failed. Okay, do your own research with that, of researching who's failed and who learned from their mistakes. I failed. I failed big time when it came to finances, okay? And now I'm at a point to where, okay, now I know what to do. I know how money works. I have a plan. Now I'm executing that plan. And I'm not here to give financial advice again, but I'm here to tell you that there are certain mistakes that you don't have to make. You don't. You just don't have to make certain mistakes if you don't have to. And it's as simple as that. And, I've seen with relationships, women specifically are very, women that don't understand money, they really don't understand money. Like, they really don't. And men, they're kind of indifferent when it comes to it. But women, it's actually statistically proven, right, that women have the most amount of debt in the United States, for example. They have something like 80% of the debt, but they're only making like 48% of the profit. So there's a big discrepancy with that, statistically speaking, right? So a vast amount of the majority of the debt comes from women. And women don't understand how this works. And I think that it's our job as men to really lead and guide women, because if you can shape the female mind and the female spirit to some degree, because you can be like a vessel for her, right? You can be a vessel for her. And I think that when you understand money as a man, you're able to channel that a little bit better in your relationships. And from what I've seen in my relationships with women is that, and I love women, don't get me wrong, I love women, but I have seen that a lot of women just don't care to understand how money actually works. They literally believe that it's your job to make the money and it's their job to spend it. Like, they genuinely believe that. So you, as a man, if the more that you understand how money works and the more that you can just set those boundaries with money, which is one of the other reasons why Bitcoin is so good, is because how is somebody going to be able to take, any of your Bitcoin unless anything, like, because if you have the keys, like, let's say you have the cold storage wallet, unless you know the certain sequences of those words or whatever it is, however the cold storage is set up, you're not going to know like how to get into it, how to have access to it. So that's another great thing about Bitcoin when it comes to relationships, is that it can help protect you from your assets and your own currencies as well. I think Bitcoin has a great potential, but it's just a matter of leaning into that lack of understanding and what I call that retardation, because it's true. Sorry, baby, I'm retarded and into Bitcoin. I hope everybody has a blessed rest of your day. Peace. Until next time.